Well, for today's project, I thought I'd like to show you how I made this manual remote switch control for my layout. Well, when I first planned the layout, everything was pretty high touch. I had a DCC power system, and that meant a lot of track and wheel cleaning. I did mostly manual coupling and uncoupling of the cars, and I controlled out of the switches just with my finger. But recently I've converted over to dead rail or battery power for the locomotives, and that eliminated most of the track cleaning and wheel cleaning. And then I upped my game just a little bit and went with the Katie magnet system so that I could couple and uncouple the cars remotely without touching them. So that's a lot less fiddling. And then finally I decided to go all the way and actually put some remote control on the actual turnouts themselves. So if that sounds interesting to you, I will go into detail and tell you what, let's just make one of these on camera, and that way you can see what I did. The supplies I needed for this design: some music wire, 0.047, some small dowels, 3/16, and then some really small brass washers. I used 3 different drill bits on this project: a 1/16, a 3/32, and a 3/16. And because I have 20 of these to do, I decided it would be easier for me to take a few minutes and make a small drilling jig out of a piece of aluminum. The design that I chose to go with is dependent upon the fact that I'm using Pico switches on my layout, and they are already spring-loaded. In other words, they snap into position and stay there because there's a tiny little built-in spring there. In one of my books, I found an example of a little circular indicator flag on the turnouts. So I thought, well, let me see if I can incorporate that into my design as well. Let me use my little prototype panel here to show you how the design is supposed to work. This could not be simpler, actually. So we're going to take some wire. This is the essence of the control. And basically, we're going to drill a hole in the layout, and with a couple of bends in this wire, it's going to fit over one of the little control horns on my Pico turnout. And then where the wire comes through at the bottom of the layout, I will simply put a bend on the wire. Okay, and that'll do 2 things. Number 1, it will position it vertically so it's not going to fly out. And also it will create a lever so that I can simply move the wire back and forth, and it will very simply control the turnout. And then with another bend in the wire, I can mount that little vertical circle indicator on the switch as well. And then to control this switch, on the end of the dowel there'll be a small hole, and it will just basically push and pull. I mean, this is literally as simple and easy as you can get for remote controlling a switch. And all of this takes place underneath the layout. So let's get busy and build another control for this switch here, just like we did here. I always want the indicator to be toward me on this side of the track so that it doesn't get blocked by any of the rolling stock. And I want the indicator flag to indicate either straight through or angled. Not that there's a huge difference in the rotation here. But it does mean that I have to sort of plan if I'm going to drill a hole on this side of the switch or on that side of the switch. And then I had to decide, well, when I push and pull on the control, do I want the push and pull to indicate where I'm going? Like push to go on this turnout and pull to go straight? Or do I want it to mimic what I was used to in pushing and pulling the switch. So that would mean that when I pull on the control, just like I would pull on this track, that's actually the turn going away from me. And so that's what I decided, because I was used to doing this back and forth. I decided that I would do push and pull on the switch to activate that, simply because that's what I was used to. Here's the switch that we're going to remotely activate. I'm going to flip my jig over. We'll stick it on the pin, and that will help us drill our hole in the right spot for the wire. I checked underneath to make sure I wasn't going to drill into anything important. So the wire will come up out of the board here. It will wrap over, back around, and up. That's the shape of the wire that we'll be using. Kind of a mirror image of this one over here. So this wire will come up and over. So let's put a 90-degree bend, a right angle bend on that wire. An inch or so. There we are. There's our bend. So now this is going to come up out of the layout, over, and toward us. It's going to wrap back around the pin. So in our little jig, you can see up out of the layout, around this pin, and back, and then up. So we've got 3 bends to make. We just made one of them, 2 more. So I got the second bend started with our needle nose pliers. And then I finished the bend just by wrapping it around that drill bit so that it wouldn't pinch. So up out of the layout, right hand in this direction, and then looping back. And so now let's just make another bend and bring this vertical straight up. Well, there it is, just 3 easy bends, up, over, loop it back, and straight up. And we'll clip this off here. Well, I cleaned the edges a little bit with some sandpaper. I'm going to put some flux on here. That really helps when you're soldering. That's how we're going to attach our little disc here, the little washer, to this wire. So let's tin up our washer first. And then we'll solder this in place. All right, now let me clean that up just a little bit. There we are. Let's just double check to make sure it fits okay on the layout. Great, that's going to work good. So let me take this out and let's hit it with some black spray paint out in the shop. A little black spray paint on the wire, and then using some red and green acrylic, I put some green on the front of the disc, some red on the back, and then sealed it with a little bit of lacquer. So let's see what this looks like on the layout. Okay, good. Now I have to decide which side of that vertical I'm going to put the little dowel rod. So remember, I'm going to mimic my normal action of pushing and pulling the points. So I need to be on this side of that little vertical wire. So I will trim this dowel for length. Okay, here's our dowel cut to length, and I rounded the end of it. I put some brown acrylic here on the end that you'll be seeing coming through the fascia, and again sprayed it with a little lacquer just to seal it up. So now we need to drill a hole here on this end of our dowel. All right, we got our hole drilled in the fascia, and then on the end of our dowel, I drilled a hole here, but I made it sort of an oblong hole so that the wire can move a little bit. Don't make this hole too tight. Don't get it too close to the end or you'll split the wood out. And I used a little bit of CA to just kind of reinforce this once it was drilled out. So underneath the layout, it'll be easier for me to show you right here on the desk than it will be to try and film it upside down. But anyway, this little wire is coming straight down, and then this little wooden dowel will be coming in this way, right? So what we're going to have to do is put a bend on the wire this way, in this direction, just like that. And again, your bend, or on some of my other turnouts, the bend will be in this direction, but in this case, the bend will be in this direction. And then all we have to do is really slip this into the wire. But before we do that, I'll want to trim the wire pretty close because this is a very short dowel. On the turnouts that are farther away from the fascia, I won't have to worry as much. But there's only so much flexing that I can do on this wooden piece without breaking it. Don't ask me how I know that. And so I'll want to trim it a little long and slip it over the end. So it will be doing this, right? Well, there we go. I don't know how it could be simpler than that. I suppose you could just buy some of those Caboose Industry hand throws, but for a remote throw, this is about as simple as it gets. And like I say, just pennies for just a little bit of wire, wooden dowel, and you got yourself a remote control, manually operated switch, no batteries required. Now, granted, I'm not a fine-scale detailed modeler, and if you are, I'm sure you can make these look even more prototypical to suit your taste. Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for making it this far into the video. I'll see you next time. Well, 2 down, 18 to go. Wish me luck.